So, hello, Tony. So, we are talking about how sports can raise a nation's economy and what kind of changes it can bring to a nation.
Okay, we've talked about branding. So certain sport icons, for want of a better term, create a branding and a social awareness worldwide. And then when someone like David Beckham becomes an ambassador for the country and sponsors come in to support him through merchandising, making money, then they automatically means the country will get exposure as well, which leads to economic growth. The other way is through the Olympic Games and through the Commonwealth Games. The Olympic Games is a mass media exposure, and the money behind the Olympic Games is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So if your country can achieve Olympic gold medals, then people will look at your country in a positive manner. In Australia in '72, they had no gold medals. They developed the AIS, which is the Australian Institute of Sport, and they put money into sport to the extent that they made sport into a science. So they will evaluate with a GPS system now how far you run, which direction you run in. They will evaluate things like the speed you are running at, so explosive pace versus recovery pace, and all this data is collected. They now study recovery sessions with different types of ice baths. Nutrition is massive, so everything to do with sport is made into a science, and the net result is Australia now third or fourth on the Olympic ladder in gold medals, behind the USA, 350 million people, China, 1 billion people, and then Australia, 20 million people. It doesn't make sense, apart from the fact that they have constantly driven sport. So now the Australia is seen as the English-speaking gateway into Asia. So people come to Australia to set up businesses in order to move forward through into Asia where they want to do business. China is another example. Many years ago, nobody wanted to do business with China because China didn't want to speak English. America, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, even the Germans all learn English as a main business language. The Chinese wouldn't. But that being said, some of them are now educating themselves in English, but their economy is so big. But what they have achieved is they've achieved recognition in the Olympic Games. And through the Olympic Games, they're now on the Olympic ladder. And they're second or third, and in some instances, first in a lot of the sports. Everyone's thinking, what are people doing in China? So that leads to the question, and people looking at China, doing visits to China to find out what's going on, and all of a sudden they're seeing an economy that's booming because China has a massive supply of very cheap labour. So consequently, products can be produced there, and people want to be able to buy from China. So now China is raising itself as a major economy purely through the fact that the Olympic Games showed the world who they are. The world came to visit and explore, and the exploration has led to the fact that they want to do business with China. So China's industry is booming. Nelson Mandela has raised South Africa. He's been out of jail, and he's had a Rugby World Cup there. He's had a Soccer World Cup there. And for Christ's sake, India decided to move the IPL League, which is the Indian Premier League cricket, to South Africa because of issues in India. In 3 weeks, pretty much, the whole tournament was picked up, dropped in Africa, and was a success. So they even embraced cricket from that point of view. So if you have sport, people will pay attention. If you can deliver sport, people will want to know what's behind it. And if that's the case, governments will visit to find out what's changed, and consequently they will see the infrastructure, and more importantly, they will invest. And if Pakistan can sort out its sporting differences and get people to recognise it through Olympic Games or through #1 players or through the Pakistani national cricket team, I can absolutely guarantee you countries will want to know why. If the cricket team suddenly changes and becomes #1, they'll want to know why. And to know why, they have to visit Pakistan. And the moment they visit Pakistan, everything gets exposed and Pakistan will rise. And it could be 30 to 40 years, but there's got to be a lot of mindset before that happens.
And how do you think bringing physical education to school would help with that and opening parks? Because this is what happened in Australia.
Because, again, it's not a short-term thing. I've said
how long did it take for Australia to build this sporting culture?
It took Australia 25 years to implement and build a sporting culture and be successful from it. But at the end of the day, when you start a sporting culture back in 1972, a lot of today's great athletes, which is 30 years on now, 40 years on in some instances, they were all young kids at that time. So you need to implement a decision of change that implement of change needs to be driven through the majority, which in this case are school children, and the school children need to be given grassroots training. And as they embrace grassroots training, they'll embrace exercise. Consequently, exercise feeds the brain feeds intelligence, and intelligence means you'll have a smarter nation anyway. So what will happen in Pakistan is through grassroots sport, you will develop a culture, and that culture will reap rewards 6, 7, 8, tenfold. But it's not a short-term plan. You can't go to the under-18s today and say, let's make them the new icons. You've got to go to the under-3s, 4s, 5s, 6s and start with the small primary schools, getting children into parks, getting children to be able to exercise, and then they will grow up 6, 7, 10, 12, 15, 16, 18 with a culture. And by the time 20 years from now or 15 years from now they get to a level of understanding, then the nation will be in a position whereby it doesn't have 180 million people and 1,000 decent athletes. It has 180 million people and 50 million of those are athletes of some type, or at least trained, conditioned human beings of some type. And to draw on a football team from 1,000 athletes is difficult. But if you've got 50 million players, imagine the results that would give you a cricket team and a football team. So consequently, you need to start at grassroots and give yourself 25 to 30 years. It's been a long time where Pakistan have fallen backwards. They didn't fall backwards overnight. They fell backwards over the last 15, 20 years. So you need to give yourself 15, 20 years to recover. It's exactly the same as what we spoke about earlier with regard to weight. You lose weight, you don't lose it overnight. If you put weight on over 3 years, give yourself 3 years to lose the 5 kilos you put on. But if you try and lose 5 kilos in 3 weeks, nothing's going to change. It's just a quick fix, and we're just kidding ourselves.
Thank you so much.